my reading buddy, Napoleon. So Napoleon is this cute guy here. I'm not really sure if he's a dude or a dudette. But say hi, Napoleon. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Vernie, and this is Vernie Reads. So I hope you are having a blast. A blast meaning to say you're enjoying your day, and if you're like me, keeping herself busy with things that make her pass the time so as not to dwell on the idea that this is the 4th month of the community quarantine. So it started in March, April, May, June. Yes, this is the 4th month of the quarantine, and if it's not driving you crazy, it certainly is driving me crazy because for how long will this last? Only time can tell. But anyway, we're not here to dwell on that, and I wanna share with you 3 books I've read this quarantine period before I share with you again my TBR or my to be read list for the rest of June and my birthday month, July. So let's get on with it. For the duration of the quarantine period, I was able to read a lot of books. Some of them I read lightheartedly, meaning to say because they are easy reads. But I particularly choose 3 books that I read from the list. The reason I chose these books is that one of them actually gave me something very educational, in a sense that I was transported or was able to experience life from the point of view of someone who is in the autistic spectrum. The other one is very timely because it deals with racism in the United States, something that has a parallel in this country as well. And the other one is a YA novel that have this very unique plot. So those are the 3 books that I'll be discussing with you as I do this sort of wrap up of the books I've read. So one of the books I was telling you about is Everyday by Levithan. So this is a YA contemporary novel in the romance genre that tells about the story of the main character, who is named A. So he is just an existence being. As a character in the story, this A is not quite human in a sense that he has no physical body, and he is just a consciousness. So the story revolves around the idea that A wakes up in a different body every day. So it's kind of a spoiler, but there's no way of telling you the story without getting into that. So the conflict is, of course, in all YA contemporary novel is the love interest. So A falls in love, and then the conflict, as you can guess, how will this character be able to explore this love and actually engage in his love interest, considering the circumstances or considering the fact that he has no body and cannot live as a single person in a single body all his life. And then, of course, it tackles a lot of issues such as love being this freeing thing that transcends physical appearance and gender constructs that we have built around us or society has built around us. Because the main character's predicament is that he wakes up in a different body every day, hence the title, and get to be a boy one day, a girl the next day, and so on. So the main character's interest, who is a girl named Rhiannon, also struggles with trying to deal with this young love, considering that the person or the character or the existence that she is in love with is in the body of different people every day. So struggles with her own prejudices, forced even to face them because as a young girl, she didn't realize that she has these prejudices against this set of people or people. Rhiannon was forced to face her prejudices when A inhabits a body that she is not used to or doesn't fit her notions of what's pleasant and acceptable. So for example, when A is in the body of a girl, she starts to question or she gets uncomfortable with the idea of being intimate with someone in the same gender because she is raised in a heteronormative environment and so on. A also struggles with the fact that Rhiannon is not as fluid as he or she is because having that kind of life, A managed to transcend the idea that love has limits. So there. So also the story is very interesting because it also tackled issues faced by young people nowadays. So it tackles suicide, self-harming, mental health. It tackles obesity and adolescent drug addiction and young people who have issues with their parents and how it affects the way they are brought up, the way they integrate with other people and all that. So this book is very interesting despite the fact that this is YA because I'm not really a big fan of contemporary novels, especially if the biggest turning point in the story is, well, romance. But it did tackle pressing a very adult issue on acceptance, and at the same time, it banks on the idea that supposedly if we are to be ideal about love, we have to pursue the fact that it should be freeing and not confining. In a sense that we should be free to love whoever we love, considering that we are not hurting other people. So there, I'll be rating this 3 stars out of 5 because despite the fact that I love the way this was written, I love the uniqueness of the plot, I'm not really a fan of the genre because although this book have a lot of feels in it, or it's very emotional to the point that maybe some of you would cry at some parts because there are parts that almost made me cry but not quite. However, I simply don't relate, or I did not feel the intensity of it because old person, young adult. I mean, how do I explain it without sounding so dismissive? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of young adult. I do understand, however, that there are people who likes reading it because they enjoy it. I enjoy it, but not to the point that I love it. So, there. But 3 stars out of 5 is still a high rating. I rated 3 stars because David Levithan have written such amazing lines. I highlighted most of it, and said lines stay with you even after you finished reading the book. I know I seem like I'm saying that YA is cheesy, cliche, and all that, but some of the things that are discussed in the books transcends the age group that this book is supposedly targeting. The artistry of the book, I guess, is on the way David Levithan actually praised the feelings of the characters. So it was told from the point of view of A. So it tells the characters curiosity on why people. It tells the main characters social commentary of what this character finds very weird or very bad in society as general, and the status quo that people mindlessly follows every day, even if in following this status quo they're actually risking their chance to happiness. So this is the second book that I would like to discuss. So this is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. So this was written by Mark Haddon and categorized as a literary novel. So fun fact, literary novel are actually novels that discuss a lot of philosophical that deals with philosophical things philosophical, meaning they are not meant to be light because they are social commentaries of existing societal norms and experiences of people that are not usually tackled in normal books that we read for light reading. I wish I know that before I started picking this book and going directly to reading it, because reading this book is quite difficult for me. So the reason why it's difficult to read is because, number one, it is told from the point of view of someone with Asperger's syndrome. So for those of you who doesn't know what Asperger's syndrome is, when I did my research, it's a type of condition. It's a type of condition in the autistic spectrum wherein people afflicted by this developmental setback is actually do not function the same as you and me, meaning to say they are very attached to patterns and their lives are governed by the patterns that they set for themselves, schedules, the environment, and they're not very really good with change. So imagine Sheldon Cooper but less quirky and more problematic. Problematic in a sense that people with Asperger's tend to struggle a lot in their lives because the people surrounding them simply do not know what they are suffering from. So the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime discussed this character, Christopher Boone, who is very good at math. Everything with him is math and patterns and all that. So that's the second reason why it's very difficult to get through, because there are a lot of mathematical equations and mathematical explanations of common things that we usually don't really put mathematical equations with. And the third one is it tends to discuss a lot of things at the same time, because since it is written from the point of view with someone suffering from Asperger's syndrome, this character could be talking about one thing and then refer to another thing and then go back to this one thing and then talk about another thing completely different from what he is originally talking about. And I'm like, where are we now? What are we discussing now? So, but if you get past that, and as a reader, you realize that it is the author's storytelling device that makes the reader totally relate with how the mind of the main character works, and it's not meant to be enjoyed. For me personally, I think the book is not meant to be enjoyed in a way we enjoy light novels, because it is meant to put you in the place of this character and just experience life from the perspective of someone who has Asperger's. And from that, when I realized that, I was amazed by the writing style of the writer, because it's very effective to the point that I have to put the book down because it's exhausting me emotionally and painfully, because I find it exhausting and I'm just reading it. Imagine if this person is actually alive and living that kind of life and having that kind of mind and interacting in a world that is not really friendly with people or with persons suffering from a developmental disorder. So I still suffer through the book because I still finished the book even though the last 50 pages is the hardest, because I want it to just be done with, because I'm feeling very tired for the sake of the character. But it's enlightening at the same time, because it gives me the notion that we go through life taking for granted how easy it is for us, because we created a society that caters to all our comforts. But imagine someone suffering from something that makes discomfort uncomfortable for them, because sometimes we tend to be very selfish with our comforts, ensuring that we are comfortable to the point that we forget that there are people who simply needs more of our assistance, in a sense that whenever we try to to impose, for example, rules and laws in society, we tend to look at the common man. Common man being the person who is normally able, and forget that there are people who are suffering from different things. So imagine trying to force them to live in a society that basically does not cater to their needs. Imagine the struggle of those people. So I find it very educational. Mark Haddon has showed that these characters, or the character of this boy, Christopher, with Asperger, can have this very helpful to society if we just know how to harness their strength. So he is very good at math, he's very good with patterns, he is very good with concentrating in a task no matter how simple the task is, and ensure the perfection of the finished product, as a matter of saying. So I guess it also tells us that we can learn a thing or two from these people when it comes to sticking to something and get it done. Because upon reading it, it reminded me of this another figure or gets Asperger syndrome known. And this is Greta Thunberg, the current face of global environmental activism. So Greta Thunberg is suffering from Asperger syndrome, and as I mentioned earlier, they tend to get attached with these things, with the things that they find important. So what Greta Thunberg did is that she stopped going to school and start dedicating her time protesting about climate change, which sparked a global activism that compels nations, especially nations in the first world countries, that to lower their carbon intake to save the world. So imagine that kind of attachment to a cause can actually create a ripple effect, and then later on tidal waves of change. So in the story, Christopher Boone was presented as this seemingly helpless person who needs his father all the time, but when he is faced with this predicament and has to rely on himself, he was able to do it. Of course, there are difficulties, but Christopher Boone was able to get through all of them and, be successful at the end. So it's inspiring, and at the same time, very mind-opening to the possibility of getting a thing or two from these people when it comes to focusing on something that is important. Because we tend to be scattered brained. We abled people, or normally abled people, tend to be, interested in a lot of things at the same time. And then failing to accomplish something that actually matters more than to ourselves but to other people. So I guess it's really nice, but I'll also be giving it 3 stars out of 5 because this book tired the hell out of me. Tired in a sense that I find it very difficult to read it from beginning to finish. Sit at a single reading, which I tend to do with some of the books, considering that it's shorter compared to the other books, because that it's just that effective. The third book I've read is The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. So I don't if this is unfamiliar to you, it is because it's quite an old book. It got adapted to a movie in 2008, or it got adapted to a film in 2008. So I get to know about this book because one day I was browsing through the quarterly journal of the university I work in, and then saw this essay written by the top boss of the school, and she mentioned it in the essay. And then, as fate would have had it, when I was in this bookstore, I found it and decided to take it because because I have this thinking that when you read books read by great people, you are showered by their greatness. So anyway, so I read this book because I got this book because of that, but did not really read it right away. During this quarantine, I was overwhelmed with other stuff, other internal stuff. So when I look at my bookcase, I took this one out of the pile without really thinking too much about it. And then when I opened the book, I read this line. So this line said, "People who think dying is the worst thing don't know a thing about life." And that's enough for me to actually read it from beginning to finish, because it's just that profound. So it's that weird moment when it seems like the book chose the reader, because it seems like the book knows what I really need that moment. Actually, a motivation to live. Anyway, so the book discuss racism because it tells about this white girl who lost her mom in an accident that she gets blamed for by her father. So it tells the story of, in the beginning of the story, of her strained relationship with her father that made her run away with her black nanny, Rosaline. So the name of the girl is Lily. So Lily and Rosaline ran away. They met these 3 black women and lived with them. These 3 black women are actually beekeepers. They are sisters. They kept bees. And the reason why the title of the story is The Secret Life of Bees is because, or every existential thing or thing about life that the little girl, the 14-year-old girl in the story, is actually learning to live and understand and accept, has a bee metaphor or beekeeping metaphor that explains it. So that's why it's titled The Secret Life of Bees. So while this black woman, August, stand as the surrogate mother of this 14-year-old Lily, August teaches Lily how to keep bees for their honey, and that's when August uses the bees and how to keep them in order to teach Lily how to do life, or how to live her life, or to be the person she wants to be. It discussed racism because it was set during the time when blacks are fighting for the right to cast their votes in election. It showcased a case of racism. Lily experienced racism firsthand, because the thing is, when you're not racist, you don't think it actually exists. Like for you, it's very normal for you to treat black people as people, because no matter the color of our skin, we bleed the same way. But when Lily was made aware of the racism through this very nice plot device, so what the author did is Lily started living in a community of black people, and she realized the discomfort of having a different color. So it's like she's put in a position where the color of her skin is suddenly something that sets her apart. So the author of the story made her feel uncomfortable being the only white person in the room, and it emphasized what every black person feel living in a white dominated society who are also racially discriminate towards them. So it's a very masterful way of telling racism, because the only way you can actually understand racism is when you actually experience it. So Lily experienced it, not in a bad way, but she experienced that people do see color, and although she wasn't discriminated in a very major way, because these black people is making her feel comfortable in the house because they are very welcoming. There are subtle instances when Lily was made aware of how different she is because of the furtive looks, the disdain of other people, the disdain of other black people towards her, even though she didn't do anything wrong and was just white. So it explains, why do you hate these people so much? They're born black. It's not their fault. Nobody chose to have, nobody personally chose the color of their skin. So it was a very poignant telling of what racism is and how it affects people, especially how it cultivates hatred based on something that no people has control over. I mean, you can blame people, you can hate people for starting wars. For example, you can hate them for being stupid at times, because that's all personal choices. You can hate people for preferring this over this, because because it's a choice, or those things stem from having choices. But the color of the skin is nobody's choice. The race they are born with is nobody's choice. And of course, yeah, so it was explained here. So I find it a bout of luck. I chose this book to read just when racism is becoming more and more of a problem in the United States, as I was looking at the news, because there is this black person, George Floyd. Mr. Floyd was killed by this white policeman who knelt on his neck. So, and it sparked a global movement to stop police brutality, stop, in general, racism, and all that. So in the Philippines, there are parallels, very scary parallels. If there's police brutality in a place like the United States, which is portrayed as this place where dreams come true and all that, and the economy is not that bad, and compared to other countries like, hello, the country where I'm in, police brutality here is much worse because it is sanctioned by the government. They say these killings are sanctioned by other politicians, as they have mentioned in their speeches before, encourage police officers to actually kill people who they think are drug offenders in cold blood. So imagine these people empowered by more powerful people than them, holding a gun that they can indiscriminately fire to people they suspect of being drug offenders. So you can see where the violence is starting, and it's not going anywhere. It's not stopping anytime soon. Anyway, I digress. So yes, I just said that to tell you the parallels of the stories that I read. So I find this, perhaps if I were to dedicate, or if I were to recommend books to be read by young people in order to understand the cluster F that is happening in the country, to see where it's coming from, why people end up being people who hurt other people, and to understand the philosophy behind oppression and racism. I think this is a good book. It's a coming of age novel. So there you have it. Those are the books that I've read, or some of the books I've read. Telling you all the other books that I've read, because there's a lot of them, but I just chose this to be the most I find interesting. I hope I did not spoil them enough for you to lose interest. Well, anyway, since this is in the middle of June, so see, it's only June. It feels like it's been 100 years already. I'll be telling you the books that I'm currently reading, that I'll be discussing in other videos, if I'll be making videos. I don't know, it's up to you if you want me to make videos. But part of my I'll be sharing with you my to be read pile for the remainder of June, and hopefully the beginnings of July. So as promised, I'll be sharing with you the list of books that I plan to read this second half of June and for the first half of July, if I won't be able to finish all these books by the end of June. So just to be safe. Anyway, currently I'm still reading this. So this is a book written by a Filipino feminist author, Ninochka Rosca, entitled State of War. This is actually very interesting because it's an allegory, a story that allegorizes the martial law period, and I'm 245 pages in, and I'll be telling more about the story, the writing in my review, because I'll be dedicating a review for this book because it's just that good, the story. Okay, so this is Ninochka Rosca's State of War. So I'm still currently reading this. Okay, for this month, or for the remainder of the month, I'll also be reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, because one of my favorite YouTuber decimated the book. Decimated in a sense that it made me curious to actually read it and see if our views of will agree, how good or bad a book is will agree to this one. So I borrowed this from a friend and see if this is what they say it is. So A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm also gonna finish. Actually, I finished this book, but I'm only around 65 pages in, so I still have to rewind it because it didn't really make an impact. But I would like to finish this. This is also a trilogy, a YA fantasy, futuristic, in a sense, novel. So this is 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. So I've been seeing a lot of this. So I have people told me that this book is nice because the cover is nice, and I have to agree. It's Instagrammable, but I want to read it and go back to young adult fiction. And I don't know, I think it's a light read considering the other books that I've already read. And this one, I borrowed it from a student and didn't manage to finish reading it or returning it to him because of the pandemic. So while we were reviewing for a quiz bee that we are going to participate in before the pandemic, he has this, and I find it very interesting because I like Lord de Vera. Yeah. So this is History with Lord. Chismis noon, kasaysayan ngayon. So it's by a Filipino author. It's actually a commentary of famous chismis or gossips in Philippine history, and I would like to get through it because it sounds fun. And Lord de Vera is a satirist, so I want to read it. I want to have fun while reading his version of these gossips in Philippine history. But don't worry, I'll be counter-checking the facts here with my other history books at the back because I also have books by Renato Constantino, and yeah, only Renato Constantino because he's the only historian I trust aside from Ambet Ocampo. Anyway, this will be the 4 books I'll be reading this second half of June and probably the first days of July. So I hope you enjoyed another episode of Vernie Reads, and I hope you will be back for more as I review more books. If you have nothing else to do, read it. But if you rather read than watch these videos, good for you. Thank you and goodbye. Have a nice day. See you on the next one.